Back when I was little, I used to rent a lot of games. From the NES all the way to the GameCube and PlayStation 2 generation, I'd get to rent 3 games for 1 week, every week. Because of this, I've played pretty much the entire European library of games released for the older systems that I owned, with a few exceptions. Sometimes I'd get to rent an American game together with a converter, like Chrono Trigger or Earthbound. Sometimes a game just wasn't available. When emulation started becoming a thing, I started delving into everything that I'd missed previously. Sometimes I played a game that never made it over here, other times I got into a thing that I didn't think I'd get into. Ys 3, Wanderer of the Ys, was one of those games. The game lacked polish, had a really rough grind to it, and was infuriatingly hard to younger me, but something about it just struck with me. I'd try Ys 1 and 2 emulated on the NES as well, which were even rougher, and I don't even think I finished those. Then I got older and I started focusing more on PC gaming in general, and what do you know? Xseed is bringing the remakes of Ys to Steam. The Ys 1 and 2 collection was a fantastic way to go through the original games again, and oh man, the change in gameplay to Ys 3 with Oath and Felghana was just what it needed. So this year, in the middle of all the fantastic games being released one after another, Falcom brings out Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Dana on PlayStation 4, except it's not with Xseed doing the localization, but Nipponichi Software America. It's fine, right? I mean, Ys has always been more focused on gameplay setup and boss battles. The story is oh god, they misspelled the name of the demo on the PlayStation Store. So, from a gameplay perspective, Ys 8 is a actual triumph. I know there are people opposed to the newer Ys games with party members, or even just games that don't just feature a doll exclusively, but I'm not one of them. Hell, Ys Origin is my favorite entry in the series, and that one doesn't even have you play as Adol Kristen at all. Ys 8's gameplay is focused on fast and solid gameplay, which has always been the strong point of the series. The switch to 3D hasn't really slowed down the action too much, and it's really satisfying to go into the slow motion state after dodging just in time. Same for the flash guard system, although that one feels like it can get abused way too much, especially later on when the enemy attacks start becoming bigger and cover larger areas of the screen. If I'd give one criticism towards the combat, it's flash guarding. It seems a little excessive, especially next to the already evasive variant of it. Not just that, but it also can get abused really hard with certain items that you can equip later on in the game. Then there's the whole party system. There's 3 major enemy weaknesses in Ys 8. Hitting an enemy with one enough breaks their guard, allowing the entire team to do full damage on them so as to not fully trivialize the other party members against those enemies. Even though the weakness system is primarily there to force you to switch party members, I didn't really mind it. It helps that most of the characters that you can play as are really fun to use, and that you get 2 characters per damage type, so you can have some choice as to who you take with you. Adol wasn't even my favorite character to play in this game. Most action RPGs tend to trip over camera problems and finicky lock-on systems going for the wrong enemy in the heat of battle. Ys 8 mostly avoids this, but it might be because I mostly played as Adol and Dana, who both have wide slashes aimed at fighting larger groups. That said, I was surprised to see the various lock-on settings in the options menu to fine-tune the system to what you prefer beyond just auto-lock on yes or no toggles. I think it's interesting to note that there's no money or currency in this game either. Since everyone's stranded on an island, there isn't much need for money. Instead, it all comes down to trading or crafting items and gear, though with the amount of loot monsters drop and how many of them you face constantly, it kinda just boils down to the same thing as money. I was very surprised to see a notice board with quest timers in an Ys game though, a Trails staple brought over to this series. Not the only Trails staple to get brought over to Ys either. Every event that passes time in the story changes all the NPC dialogue as well, giving the village a stronger sense of being alive, fleshing out all the side characters as the game goes on, which is a great thing because this game takes place on a small island after everyone gets shipwrecked. All the castaways are forced to work together not only to survive against the threats on the island itself, but to get off it. This is something that translates in gameplay through the suppression and interception battles, which is kind of a wave-based survival mode where all the villagers scream in your ear for 20 minutes. Especially the parrot. The parrot really loves screeching to you. There are some incredibly great moments as you complete quests and get to know more about the villagers, as each of them has their own character arc to themselves. Taken out of their everyday lives, they start questioning themselves as people, as well as their capabilities and place in the world, whether they're on the right path in life and how they should continue if they make it back. A nun with a crisis of faith, a medical student unsure of his capabilities thrust into the position of village doctor, and Dogi with a large amount of walls to crush. I was surprised how well all of these arcs were handled, especially for an game, which is why it's an absolute shame that NISA got to do the localization. They're usually bad already, forcing in memes and jokes that don't fit the actual narrative of what the game is originally doing, but Ys 8, they didn't even care to go that far. The game's dialogue and text feels machine translated, and I'm actually shocked they bothered to have voice actors read the awkward lines that they put in there. This isn't even up to NISA's usual standards. To make it clear, this isn't a case like Persona 5 with the translation controversy where people complain a few sentences were rough, or even Yakuza 0 where Majima talks like a teenager on Tumblr in 80s Japan thanks to awkward flavor writing from an editor. From what I've heard, the game was translated per kanji, so word per word, without paying attention to phrases, statements, or the overall plot. You can still get the intention and meaning of everything originally said, but it barely qualifies as functional English at times. And at the worst of times, it's actually worse than the original English that was there in the original Japanese text. Apparently there's lines where the game goes back to Japanese audio and mutes characters while playing the English voice cast. And besides that, they didn't even bother changing the timers for the auto-skip option that lets text boxes advance to the next one after the voice acting is finished, so characters get cut off in mid-sentence in the English version. It comes across as a complete lack of care because they figured they could rush this out the door without consequences because Falcom is a relatively small company. But after an email campaign from Ys fans directly to Falcom, NISA has offered a formal apology and said that they will fix the translation. They've likely gotten a lot of pressure from Falcom because this wasn't acceptable to them, and I'm really doubtful of what will come from this. Aside from being limited in terms of what text to replace thanks to voice acting already being in place, the translations they usually churn out when they care more than this aren't exactly stellar either. Though I'd be happy if they at least bring back the Japanese location header, since those were in way better English already. Let's not even get started on how NISA promised to launch the PC version at the same time as the console release. That thing is still not out yet. In spite of the terrible localization work, I would still recommend Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Dana. It's a fantastic game, and its themes and story are still clear despite the bad translation. The only letdown gameplay-wise are the boss fights during the first half of the game, and even though the second half's bosses can be trivialized by abusing certain flashguard equipment items, avoiding that makes them feel like a proper Ys franchise boss fight, fast and frantic with fun patterns to dodge, while some of the best fucking music in JRPGs plays. Running through the island, finding castaways, doing their quests when they're in town, crushing boulders and walls blocking your path depending on villager count is all really fun. Seeing the castaway village build up from an empty field to an actual town filled with people, upgrading over time, it covered this really specific spot that I have for games when it's done well. Skies of Arcadia, Suikoden, Terranigma, and Dark Cloud were great for that. But traveling back and forth between two eras in time and seeing a great civilization before and after the fall, that just makes it feel like the game was actually made for me. I'm glad that the Ys series has been able to just keep delivering after 30 years. Not only is Ys 8 a good game, it is one of the highlights of the series. Though it is interesting to note that with the addition of Trail's gameplay ideas and a story about evolution-related events, it feels like the kind of game that Ys 1 and 2 staff members made under Enix after splitting off, which most definitely is not a complaint. This makes 2 games this year that I'd compare to Quintet's output now, and both are in my top 3 for this year so far. 2017 is a fucking crazy ride, and this is one of the better games that is out there this year. Anyway, this was AboveUp. I haven't done a video in a while because my computer died. I'm kind of on a different computer right now. It's almost the same build, so yeah, I'll be making videos again. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see ya.